This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the RD1000 Board of Trustees meeting for May 2021. The agenda is here in front of us. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Gilbert.
Okay, well, see, we want to do roll call.
Sure, Tom, I'll go ahead and take care of that. Let's start with you, Trustee Gilbert.
I am here.
Gilbert, aye. Elena, the reader. Absent. Nick Abdis. Absent. Jag Baines.
Aye, here.
Present. Tom Barandis.
I'm here.
Present. Chris Burns.
Here.
Chris present. Deborah Jones.
I'm here.
Present. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, well, welcome to our monthly meeting. I wanted to start out by noting that we did get, I hope everybody got copies of the board member, these are the CSDA publications, right? Board member handbook and Brown Act compliance manual. I know the board member handbook was a great reminder of a lot of the things that we do and a refresher. So I'm pleased that we got those distributed. Thank you, Kevin and Scott, for doing that.
Yeah, actually, Jolene and Christina took the initiative there, so kudos to them. So hopefully you all received those. On item 1.3, it's approval agenda. So I would ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Jones. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Burns. Jolene, can you take roll?
Yes, Trustee Gilbert.
Aye.
Gilbert, aye. Baines.
Aye.
Baines, aye. Barandis.
Brandis, aye.
Barandis, aye. Burns.
Aye.
Burns, aye. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, aye. The agenda is approved.
And I'd like to note at this time that Trustee Abdis has joined the meeting.
Thank you, and I'm an aye as well on that item.
All right, so on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Tom, do you want to lead us in the pledge?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Two.
Thank you, Tom. Item 1.5 on the agenda is conflict of interest. At this time, if any of the trustees have an item that may be of conflict and would like to recuse themselves, you may identify that item now, and then you would be recused from that agenda item. Okay, hearing no conflicts, we'll move on through our meeting here. We have no scheduled presentations for this morning. Item 3 is public comment. We do have a couple of members of the public on, and at this time, if anyone from the public would like to speak on non-agendized items, this is the opportunity to address the Board of Trustees on anything not on the agenda. Things on the agenda, you will have an opportunity to comment on during the discussion on those items. So any public comment on non-agenda items? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to informational items. Item 4.1, General Manager's Report. There are a couple things I want to point out in the General Manager's Report this morning. Let me find my notes. So the indirect cost allocation plan, submittals are due this afternoon for the in response to the RFQ that we issued out back in March. I did receive one response yesterday evening via electronic submission, so we know we have one. I have not opened that yet per our RFQ. Sending it through Adobe Send, there's a timestamp, so I haven't looked at it, no clue, and we will open those this afternoon. The item of interest for the board is if we receive more than one, hopefully we receive many, we need to schedule a finance committee to review those proposals. So what I'll do next week is I'll send out the submittals that we receive from each consultant. The finance committee can review those independently, and then let me know if we want to schedule interviews with some or all or none of the consultants. And then we get that scheduled sometime between, well, it's not going to happen May 17th because in the schedule it says that, but we'll start our review because we don't have time for Brown Act compliance to post an agenda for that time. But we'll be looking to schedule a finance committee meeting somewhere in the next 2 weeks to schedule interviews for the respondents. Probably towards the latter part of May, and that will give the consultant teams time to prepare for that interview, and probably larger lead time for them to do that. And then once that's over, the finance committee will deliberate and hopefully make a recommendation to the board for approval of that contract in June. The next item I want to point out, one member of the public did let me know before the meeting that he was interested in Reach A, kind of updates on where we stand. Here's the current update for Reach A. The contract is, the Corps is still working on the right-of-way and the take letters that are going out. The contract award is still scheduled for September of this year to start the cutoff wall and adjacent levee construction next spring. So if everything goes as planned, the contract award would be done this fall, and then construction would start next spring on the cutoff wall and adjacent levee. Lastly, or actually there's a couple more things on the general manager's report. We did get notice from DWR that the next year's FMAP, or the Flood Maintenance Assistance Program, the solicitation proposals are out on the street. They're due at the end of the month, and we'll consent items 5.5 and 5.6 are in regard to that, and it's authorization for the general manager to submit an application for funding. Unfortunately, next year's funding doesn't include any availability for equipment, so just deferred maintenance. So I think we took full advantage of the opportunities that presented themselves to us through FMAP for the last 3 years as far as equipment purchases go and vegetation removal. So if those consent items are approved, we'll submit an application by the end of the month. We have MBK working for us again to prepare that application and help us secure that funding. So I think we're looking at about $500,000 to apply for next year. Most of it will be deferred maintenance, vegetative management stuff, and potentially some encroachment enforcement projects that will tie nicely into our system-wide improvement framework, supposedly getting approved in the next few weeks. And then we'll have to start implementing those enforcement actions on Garden Highway, mainly visual obstructions such as fences or landscaping that we can't see the levee embankment on the river side. So fortunately, there'll be some money in FMAP, if we're awarded that grant, to be able to make some effort into helping the landowners and ourselves remove some of those highest hazard encroachments. And that was work that was identified 2 years ago through the survey that we did through the FMAP grant. And then lastly, I'm looking to schedule a legal committee. There's a number of policies that are either outdated or missing from our policy manual, and we'd like to kind of spruce those up. So I'd kind of like to check in with the legal committee on how they would like to proceed. There's a couple different alternatives on how to proceed with updating, district policies. So I'd just like to check in before staff does a lot of work down one path, that we're going in the right direction of what the legal committee and ultimately they would recommend to the board to approve. So I'm looking to schedule that in May, just as a heads up for the legal committee. And then lastly, Jag, question for you. Personnel committee, are you available next Tuesday from 2 to 3?
Yes, Kevin, I'll be available from 2.
Okay, so we'll get that agenda set up and sent out. Thank you, everyone, for your availability on the email I sent out earlier. So Personnel Committee will be scheduled next Tuesday from 2 to 3 o'clock, and I'll send out the agenda for all the trustees. At this time, are there any other questions? Also, Nick, I included the project schedule for the hydraulic model that you asked for last month. So that's attached to the GM's report. And good news is that the city and county both approved the agreement. And so I'm working on getting signatures from the respective agencies for that cost share agreement for the hydraulic model. So we should receive a third back of that total project, or 2/3 back of that total project cost in this year, next fiscal year and following. So good news, we'll partnered with the city and county. I just gotta get them together and get signatures on paper, but it's all been approved. So that's good news.
Kevin, can I comment in on that? I just want to acknowledge, like, you did a great job on coordinating, obviously having, the county and the city involved. That's a lot of herding cats, personnel and otherwise to get to an agreement on that hydraulic model. And that's a really important work product. That's a really important tool for the basin. So good job on keeping that thing moving.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I appreciate that.
Kevin, this is Chris. The legal committee, is it going to include the conflict of interest updates that you and I have been talking about?
Yeah, that's one of them, Chris. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, that one, and there's a couple other. I don't have my list sitting in front of me this morning, but just to kind of highlight or just foreshadow what the legal committee may be considering is, do we go with some standard industry available templates for board policies, i.e. CSDA's standard policy manual? The option could be that we throw out all of our old policies, use CSDA's. It gets us 95% of the way there with updated policies and all those things, and then we add in policies as we discover we need them. Or do we go through and look at all of our current policies, rewrite those, and do that research and history? So that's what I want to talk to the legal committee about before we just start going down one path or the other. And so I'll be looking for that feedback, and we're fine with either path. So any other questions on the general manager's report? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 4.2, which is the operations manager's report. Anything that the trustees would like to ask about the operations manager's report? Okay, hearing none. Scott, you're up.
Good morning, everyone. It's been a very quiet month from a legal perspective. I think I've turned to the district very little over the last month, so I don't know that I have much to report from the last month. I will report that Rebecca Smith and her baby are doing well and likely will start working back into her schedule starting in June. And so actually, I think she'll probably be covering the meeting in June because now that she's taken her, I'm going to do this in quotes, her vacation to have a baby, I'm going to actually take a vacation next month. So she'll be with you in June, and then we'll be tag teaming as we go through the rest of the year. Happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, Scott, thank you. And if you talk to Rebecca, give her our best, and looking forward to seeing her back soon. At this time, we're on to consent calendar. I would entertain a motion for consent items 5.1 through 5.6 if no trustees would like to pull any of those items.
I'll move the consent calendar.
A motion by trustee Burns to approve items 5.1 through 5.6. Is there a second?
Second. Abdus.
Second by Abdus. I'm sorry, trustee Jones, do you have a question?
Well, no, it's just a comment on the minutes. And I put this in the chat for Jolene. There's a minor error on the last page. The second personnel committee meeting was on May the 4th.
Let me see here.
It shows as April 6th. April 6th was the first meeting.
It's item 7.1, Kevin.
Yeah, I'll get there. So I'm sorry, Deborah, are we talking about the item 5.1, the meeting minutes, or are we talking about item 7.11, committee meeting reports?
It's on page 69 of 69.
Okay,
which
so,
is- yeah, it's the committee meeting minutes, 7.1.1.
okay, when we get there, I'll make a note of that. So there's no change in the board meeting minutes from last month.
No substantive change, just
Okay.
the second personnel committee meeting, which was on May the 4th. May the 4th be with you all.
Yes, thank you. All right, so I have a motion and a second to approve items 5.1 through 5.6. Jolene, will you take the roll?
Yes, trustee Gilbert.
Yes.
Gilbert, aye. Abdus.
Aye.
Abdus, aye. Baines.
Aye.
Baines, aye. Barandis.
Brandis, aye.
Thank you. Barandis, aye. Burns.
Burns eye.
Burns, aye. Jones.
Jones, aye.
Jones, aye. And the consent calendar is approved.
Thank you, Jolene. Deborah, I do see the note there. In the text, it does say May 4th, but I copied and pasted the header for formatting, so it still says April 6th. So thank you for pointing that out. And I'll get that changed in our meeting minutes that you'll see next month.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. And
Pretty
May-
good, though. If there's one of those in this whole document, that's good. There may be more, we just haven't seen them.
With you.
All right, so on to item 6.1. Presented in front of you this morning is the draft fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. This is just for review and discussion this morning. No action will be taken on this item. The intent here is to receive any feedback from the board, make any necessary adjustments, and then bring back a final budget to the board in June to adopt, which would then be effective July 1, 2021 for our next fiscal year. So we've spent a lot of time over the last month and a half, 2 months, meeting with various committees and going through as we step through the budget to develop that and working towards the budget that's presented in front of you today. Each one of those committees through that process recommended to continue to move forward in that budget development with the assumptions that were provided at the time of the meeting. And so however you all want to handle it, I think we've talked about it quite lengthy. So I could either open this up to trustees for questions, or if you'd like me to go through the budget, I can certainly do that as well. Just whatever the preference is.
Looks like we're going to defer to you, Kevin. You want to just hit a few highlights and then?
Yeah, I do want to hit just a couple highlights. Well, in the budget narrative, one thing to maybe point out on page 4, which is our budget summary. Sorry for scrolling. We did a little bit better this last year. Our total expenditures, we had anticipated in 2021 to really start kicking off the CIP, and had a lot of money in the CIP budget, almost $2.5 million to do some implementation work and some engineering work and a programmatic EIR. After the budget was approved, subsequent to that, the capital improvement project was approved. We realized we don't need the programmatic EIR and then the finance plan. So we just kind of put on pause a little bit of that funding. And so we didn't spend the 2.5 out of the capital budget last year. And therefore, our expenditures came in a lot lower than what the adopted budget had stated. We do have our budget this year for all expenditures up to about $7 million. And a lot of that is deferred maintenance that while it's not CIP implementation, a lot of the facilities are due for replacement of certain things or maintenance to be performed, i.e. Trash racks and chain guides that are worn out that could potentially fail during a flood fight or during flood operations, and then it's hard to get those parts. So what we want to do is be proactive with that maintenance on most of the plants, replace those chains and guides, and repair the racks during this summer. And then because there's a lead time on some of that material, and then we're ready to go come November 1. So that's a large portion of it. There is about $1 million in there as well to get ahead engineering. We've talked about this quite a bit, and at the operations committee as well, to be ready specifically for Plant 8, that if we do get some funding to implement CIP projects, or if we identify grants that are available, we have some engineering work that we can pull off the shelf and fit into those grant projects or get done right away. But we won't fully know what the implementation of the CIP will be until we get done with phase 2 of the capital finance plan and meet with the community and decide if we need to pare down our CIP and what's the funding mix. So that's coming later this year. But we do have some engineering work that we know won't go to waste because they're projects that absolutely have to get done regardless of the funding mechanism that happens. We may just have to phase them out. And so that's what we're asking KSN to put together for us, is that phasing of that engineering work, specifically for Plant 8 and Plant 1A, 1B. Revenue-wise, we did, just go down to this next page here. We did very well in our budget this year for revenue. We received $1.4 million from the Greenbrier Development Impact Fee. We do anticipate, I don't have it in the budget shown because it's unknown at this point, but Greenbrier has a little bit more work to do, and they couldn't start until after May 1 for environmental reasons. They have a little more work to do to finish up their project, and so there's a balance due up to almost $1.7 million, the difference between the 1.4 and 1.7. So we could potentially see, $300,000 to $350,000 this next fiscal year once final accounting's done, but it's not guaranteed. So I didn't want to show it in as a projected revenue because we don't know what their closeout costs will be. We just have to go through that accounting. So waiting on that. If it's available to us and we know what we'll receive, I'll include it in the budget that's shown to the board in June. But I don't think it's likely because they're still working and need 6 to 8 weeks, I think, is the last I heard from the development group to close that stuff out. So potentially, they're $300,000 in next year's budget. Yeah, I think those are the highlights, Tom. Obviously, the line items are down in here, full details and things. So yeah, if there's questions on it, I'd be happy to answer them if there's a specific question about any one line item or what we're thinking here.
Kevin, can you highlight how much we have in reserves?
Yeah, so we'd have to go back to the treasurer's report. Jolene, can you tell us the cash balances for the 3 reserve funds we have?
And while she's doing that, Kevin, just want to say on the increase in cost for the herbicides, I'm hopeful that that's gonna, make a difference. I know we've heard, quite a few, quite a few folks that are interested, obviously, in a program that increases our use of herbicides to clear our canals. And so I know that's an important issue to our growers. So I appreciate including that, and hopefully that works. I know that's going to be sort of a longer term thing. It's not a flip the switch kind of thing, but I think it's a good step forward.
Yeah, I appreciate that acknowledgement that it may take some time, but we are doubling the effort there just in terms of monetary, resources from last year's budget to this proposed one. We're also making some modifications in the products that we use. We've been using the same products for a number of years, and maybe the efficacy isn't as great as something different and new, provided that we don't have a huge expense in environmental costs or permitting costs to be able to use those other materials. We think that we can find the right mix, and working with a couple different consultants to put that together. But we're hopeful that we can clean that up. But like you said, it's not a flip of a switch and it's complete. But we're hopeful that we can make some serious inroads to help that situation this next year.
Yeah, and those efforts are in coordination with the water company, correct?
100%. Yeah, we have a bi-weekly schedule, bi-weekly meetings with the water company now. Gabe meets with their field staff, every other week. They discuss issues. We have a long-term schedule, month outlook schedule of various operations and maintenance activities. And so, yeah, it's coordinated effort and will be coordinated as far as the applications go for the herbicides.
All right, thanks for that, Kevin, and thanks, Gabe.
Kevin, would it be possible for you to bring up page 29 of the board packet?
You bet.
Nick, this page displays all of the balances, the total funds, 8.236.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
And then
All
just
right.
below that, it has all of the balances in the checking, the money market, the FMAP, the county treasurer, LAIF, and the city of Sacramento pooled fund.
And keep in mind, we just invoiced SAFCA for their assessment this year. So we should be receiving another $1.4 million here before the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin, can I just ask on the cost of living adjustment? We had two different numbers. One was 1.9 and the one in the budget is 2.8. Is the 2.8 the most recent? I just want to make sure we're
well, yeah, so here's the thing about the COLA. Yeah, so historically the district has used the March Pacific Index. So that number for March was produced in April, and that number was 2.8. And so it's the March number produced in April 15th. The new number that just came out yesterday, I believe, for April is, I think it was 4.6 for the Pacific. So we are using 2.8. It's what we've historically done when we've done COLAs, is the March index for Pacific.
Okay.
Any other questions on various items? Keep in mind, this is in draft form, so if you haven't had the opportunity to really dive into it, you still have that. This is yours to mull over. Send me questions or email or give me a call and let me know if there's anything that we missed or anything like that, and we can bring it back to the board in June with some modifications or suggestions. So
So I'd ask, is there, I'm sure there's more discussion, but are we going to open, if we have members of the public, I'd want to know if you're on this item.
yeah, I would open that up once trustees are done talking about it. Sounds like the dog has a toy.
Please be quiet.
Okay, I think I muted that one. All right, so yeah, if no other trustees have questions or comments on the budget, I can open it up for public comment at this time. Does anyone from the public like to discuss or ask any questions about the proposed budget? Okay, hearing none. Like I said, this is just for discussion today. I will bring this budget back to the board in June and ask for approval pending any minor changes that may come in as far as the revenue projection from Greenbrier or anything else that may come up that we know. Actually, I will know in June, so the RFQs are done. I should know or have a good idea what that contract will be for the indirect cost study, so I can add that number in so it's actually reflective of the contract amount provided that the board then approves a contract in June. So there'll be a couple minor changes, and I'll point those out. I'll highlight those in the final budget versus what you've seen today. Other than that, there'll probably be very few changes. All right, well, thank you. We'll just close the discussion on that item. And then, so no vote, no any of that. And then move on to committee meeting minutes. Thank you, Deborah. I see the note here on this. Let me just highlight it. Right there. We'll change that to May 4th. It was noted in the text, but cut and paste from the header. So we'll make that note. And if there are any questions on committee meeting minutes, I'll be happy to answer them now. All right, quiet group this morning. So no closed session. All right. I guess I'll take a motion to adjourn if there's no further items to discuss. So anyone want a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Gilbert.
Second.
I'll second.
Second by Jones. Jolene, will you take roll?
Yes, trustee Gilbert.
Yes.
Gilbert, aye. Trustee Abdus.
Aye.
Abdus, aye. Baines.
Aye.
Baines, aye. Barandis.
Aye.
Barandis, aye. Burns.
Aye.
Burns, aye. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day and great weekend.
I want to share with everybody that I told Elena that if it's a surprise and it turns out to be a boy, I want her to consider Levy for the name. This is the first RD1000 baby, board member baby. Sorry, Christina. You. All right.
All right,
Thank you all.
Have a great weekend.
Aye.
Bye.